Namaste guys, ChristianRLong, Life Enhancement Consultant, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this Wednesday evening here in Denver, Colorado. I think it's about 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. And I want to give a quick update. My body is doing much, much better. As you guys know, for the past day and a half or so, my body's been physically sick, recovering from some kind of weird cold that I got. So thank you for the well wishes from clients. I had to reschedule several healing clients today. Paula, Namaste, because as we talked about 2 days ago, we don't do pranic healing when our bodies are physically sick or when our emotional bodies are angry. Zach, Namaste, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to have you on, my traveling brethren. Olga, Namaste. So my body's doing much, much better. I've over the hump, over the hurdle of this cold. The energy was super, super low today, but basically I just spent today taking naps and more naps. Didn't do much reading, didn't do much studying, just laid low, took care of my physical body. But I want to jump on real quick and send some love to you guys. Hey, Jennifer, Namaste. Good to have you on as always. Gianna, Namaste. And I wanted to read to you from a book that has deeply transformed my life, and I still feel, Jose, Namaste, that I'm just scratching the surface of the depth and wisdom of this book. Joe, Namaste. Long time, my man. And what I've noticed in my past 20 years of spiritual study, meditation, is that some of the most profound books that have the greatest teachings in them tend to be very little books. Now, why is that? Because if the teacher and the instructor is very clear with their message, they don't need a lot of superfluous fat. They go right to the heart of the matter, right to the meat of the issue to impact the disciple. So the book that I wanted to connect you guys with today is called The Path of Discipleship. It's an extremely short book. It's about 150 pages long, small writing, small pages, and it was written by Annie Besant, who is one of the main heads of the Theosophical Society that was founded a little over 100 years ago by Madame Blavatsky in England, who were very high-level clairvoyants and spiritual practitioners, who they basically synthesized the teachings of major religions and spiritual schools around the world and codified it into a systematic study, which is known as Theosophy. So there are many, many different books written by the founders of Theosophy, senior practitioners of Theosophy, and some of them branched off and started teaching their own schools. Jay, Namaste. Michael, Namaste. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I want to read, I was flipping through the book before I got on the live stream, and I thought, well, what might be relevant to you guys where you can get some value out of this? And the part I want to read to you about is, and there's not that many chapters, there's like 4 chapters, right? So it's not like I can niche it down. So I just found a part of a chapter that I think would be appropriate, talking about the guru in initiation. Desiree, Namaste. And it's interesting that in the Western mind, we don't think much of initiation and what initiation is, what initiation means, and why initiation is so important for our personal and spiritual growth and development. And so we tend to be, the United States in general, tends to be a very independent, individualistic society, right? It's very solar plexus. Like our country, the United States, is very solar plexus orientated. And the solar plexus chakra is located right in the soft part, right below the breastbone. And it's the I. It's the me, myself, and I chakra. It deals with self-interest. When it's overly congested and overly activated, it turns into selfishness. And self-interest is actually very interesting. Self-interest means getting what you need, want, desire in your life, and selfishness is getting your need, want, desire in life at the expense of another person. So it's a very fine line that constantly requires balance, selfishness and self-interest. So this particular book talks about the importance of the guru. the importance of the teacher to initiate you to higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of understanding. And without the guru, our spiritual progress would be very, very slow, and our spiritual path would be very, very difficult. It would be similar to learning calculus without understanding the fundamentals and without having a teacher to explain the fundamentals to you as a foundation to build your understanding on, to going from arithmetic to going to algebra to going to geometry and calculus, right? It would be like going right into calculus, which wouldn't be possible, right? Because you need a basic understanding. So a guru will give you the basic understandings of spirituality to open up your viewpoint to higher teachings. And what I've loved about the past almost 15 years in pranic healing and Arhatic yoga is that as you become more aware, as you become more conductive and more receptive to higher spiritual teachings, a teacher can say something to you that opens a doorway, meaning namaste, a doorway of understanding. Like, for instance, I'll give you a really cool story of by not having a doorway open, you have what is known as a calcified idea or a fixed way of thinking about something. So there was a guy, I heard this story from one of the masters in pranic healing. There was a guy who could see energy. And for people who can see energy, that's called clairvoyance. And there's many levels to clairvoyance. So this particular person was able to see energy in many different ways. Elena, namaste, meaning when you're projecting prana, projecting energy out of your hand, he could see what kind of color the practitioner was projecting. Was it red? Was it yellow? Was it blue? Was it green? It was very accurate, right? A lot of people can't see energy to that degree. And he was able to see the chakras. So he was able to see the crown, the ajna, the throat. Hey, Scott, namaste. Joe, namaste. He was able to see the heart. He was able to see different chakras. But you know what's interesting about that? Even though he was able to see the colors, even though he was able to see the chakras, guess what school he was trained under? He was trained under the 7 chakra model. Nina, namaste. The 7 chakra model is the model that we were most familiar with, right? So almost any yoga studio and yoga school in the United States knows of that, knows of the 7 chakra model or 7 energy centers. Now, nowhere does it say in the spiritual teachings or spiritual literature that there are only 7 chakras. So that's a level of truth. There are more than 7 chakras. There are actually dozens and dozens and dozens of chakras within the human energy body. So that's kind of interesting. So this master pranic healer was pointing at one of the chakras that was beyond the 7 chakra model. And he says, what do you see right here? And he was pointing at that center. And the student said, I don't see anything. Then the teacher realized that he had been trained under the 7 chakra model. He had a calcified idea that there are only 7 chakras. Therefore, the other chakras or energy centers were veiled from his clairvoyant vision, from his clairvoyant ability. So then he says, just look a little bit closer at this area of the body. And over a few minutes, the clairvoyant was now able to see that chakra. Why? Because the teacher was able to dispel the darkness, was able to dispel the ignorance, because that's what darkness is. Darkness simply means ignorance, means not knowing something, so we're all ignorant to one degree or another. And then the student was now able to see that chakra clearly because it was revealed to that student. So that is the importance of the guru. The guru helps us see what we don't think is there. And that can take the form of many, many different ways. We see our potential as here, where the great, great teachers see our potential as unlimited, infinite, unbounded. That's why it's important for us, for people to believe in us, right? So that's part of the initiation process, that a guru takes us from where we think we are and pulls us and elevates us and expands us up to much, much greater potential than we could have ever seen possible. So coaches help us with that. Mentors help us with that. Guides help us with that. What separates those people from, say, a guru or a true spiritual teacher is that spiritual teacher has Shakti or energy to transmit into the student. And the energy is light. And with that light, there's knowledge. Right? Have you ever, and I experienced this many times with Master Choa. Zach is loving it. Is that the McDonald's phrase? I'm loving it. Zach, I'm sorry, I got you on my mind, Zach. I can't get you off my mind. Is when I was around Master Choa, very deep esoteric teachings became very, very clear and easily understandable and easily digestible when I was in the presence of Master Choa. When I was not in the presence of the teacher, things were fuzzier, things were darker, things weren't as clear. So have you ever been in the presence of somebody like that? Maybe not a spiritual teacher, maybe someone who is really good in business, maybe someone who's really good in relationships, maybe someone who's really good in some kind of sports, and just spending time with them, you feel like you're able to understand things that you couldn't understand not in their presence. So that's the purpose of a guru. Is guru means dispeller of darkness. So the light of the teacher cuts through the darkness. And by the way, you cannot remove darkness by dealing with darkness. If you have a dark room, you can't try to vacuum out the darkness. You can't kind of remove the darkness by grabbing darkness and throwing darkness out of the room. It will remain dark, right? The only way that you can dispel darkness is by introducing light through a candle, through a light switch, through some means of brightening up. So that's what the guru is for us. And the guru, you have your own guru. You have your own teacher. It might not be Master Choa. It might be another teacher. It might be a teacher that's not written about in books, right? That's your job, your responsibility. Yana, Atma Namaste, to find out who your teacher is. Harita, Atma Namaste. You could have an inner teacher, or you could have an outer teacher, like a teacher like Lord Jesus. Obviously, Lord Jesus, very, very great teacher that has illuminated and transformed and initiated many, many souls on this planet. Lord Buddha, another great teacher, right? So your teacher could be one of the great teachers, one of the great avatars, or it could be an unknown teacher that is not written about in books. And again, that's part of your spiritual practice to uncover and unravel that teacher that is constantly initiating you. Now, there's a term. We have guru, right, dispeller of darkness. And then we have a sat guru, S-A-T, sat guru. And that is a sat guru is your permanent spiritual teacher. Meaning that is the teacher that has been guiding your soul's evolution from the moment you separated from God. And that's not an accurate description, because we never separate from God. But as we become an individual soul, that teacher is guiding your growth and evolution from where you came from to going back to oneness with God consciously. Cindy, Atma Namaste. So your Sat Guru is your permanent spiritual teacher. So for instance, if you look at it from the analogy of a school, you have a history teacher, you have a science teacher, you have a English teacher, a math teacher. You have all these different kinds of teachers, and then you have the principal. And the principal is the main teacher that is overseeing your education and making sure you go to the next level of where you need to be, right? So it's not a specialty, but it's an overarching making sure that you're moving along your path. All the other teachers are specialists in what they do. So that's where spiritual guides come in, that's where mentors come in, that's where coaches come in. But that principle is making sure that you see the right history teacher, you see the right science teacher, you see the right math teacher, right? That's the job of the principal. And that would be the job of the Satguru. Does that make sense? So we have many teachers in our lives, we have many guides in our lives, but we only have one Satguru. And from the perspective of the soul, you have your parents. Your parents most likely are just your parents in this incarnation. And the dynamic of those souls will change from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. Your parents could have been a sibling, could have been a lover, could have been your children. So the dynamic that you have with your parents in this incarnation is going to be different from previous incarnations and future incarnations. But your Satguru, your permanent spiritual teacher, is the same and is unchanging. Tony, Atma Namaste. So, that being said, let us read a little bit about the Guru in the initiation process in this book, The Path of Discipleship. I'm kind of picking a random page, but there's some good nuggets in this, the next 2 pages that I thought you guys will get value out of, and then we can go from there. So, a true initiation, which is the original of the external ceremony, there is a true initiation, which is not simply initiation into an exoteric caste, but into a really divine birth, which is given by a mighty guru, which comes from the great initiator, the one initiator of humanity. We read of these initiations in the past. We know them to exist in the present. All history bears testimony to their reality. There are temples in India beneath which are the places of the ancient initiations, places which now are unknown to the people, places which now are hidden from the eyes of men, but which none the less are there, which none of the less are accessible to those who prove themselves worthy to attain them. And not in India alone are such places to be found. Ancient Egypt had also her crypts of initiation, and mighty pyramids in 1 or 2 cases stand over the ancient places that are now hidden from the eyes of men. The later initiations that took place in Egypt, those of which may have read in the history of Greece and the history of Egypt itself, those of which who may have heard of one or other of the great philosophers, were there initiated. Those took place in the outer buildings known to the people, which covered the real temples of initiation. Into these entrance was not gained by outer knowledge, but under the conditions that have existed from the furthest antiquity and that exist today as really as they existed then. For as all history bears testimony to the reality of the initiation, so does history bear testimony to the reality of the initiate. There stand at the head of every great religion men who are more than ordinary men who gave the scriptures to the people, men who trace the outlines of the exoteric faiths, men who stand out in history head and shoulders above their fellows by the spiritual wisdom that gave them glory, by the spiritual insight by means which they saw, and who testified to what they saw. For there has been one note which we have often remarked with regard to all the great teachers. They do not argue, they proclaim. They do not discuss, they declare. They do not reach their conclusions by logical processes. They reach them by spiritual intuitions. They come forth and they speak with authority that justifies itself in the very speaking. And men's hearts recognize the truth of their teaching even when it rises higher than their intellect is able to follow. For there is in the heart of every man that spiritual principle to which every divine teacher ever makes his appeal and that answers to the truth of the spiritual declaration. Even though the intellectual eyes may not be keen enough to discern the reality of that which the Spirit sees. Those great gurus then who are found in the history of the greatest teachers, as well as those whom we find standing out as the mightiest philosophers, those are the initiates who have become more than man. Such initiates exist today as they have ever existed. Nay, how should death touch them who have overcome life and death and are the masters of all lower nature? They have evolved out of humanity in the course of a millennia, which lie behind, some out of our humanity and some out of humanities anterior to our own. Some of them came from other worlds, from other planets, when our humanity was a child. Others grew up when this humanity had trodden long enough the path of evolution to produce its own initiates, gurus of our own race to help onwards the humanity to which they themselves belong. When that path is trodden and that goal is reached, for such a man there is no more possibility that death should have power over him, and that having been, he shall not continue to be. The very fact that they are found in history is the guarantee for their present existence. That would be enough to show that they exist without the testimony which is growing year by year of those who have found them and who have known them and who have taught by them and who have taken lessons at their feet. For in our time and in our own day, one after another finds the ancient path. In our own time, in our own day, one after another finds that ancient and narrow path, keen as the edge of a razor, that leads onward to the gateway of discipleship and makes entrance on the path of discipleship a possibility for men, as one another finds it. One witness after another in modern times is able to proclaim the truth of the ancient writings, and entering on that path, they may follow it stage by stage. So there was a lot covered in the 2 pages that we read, but in essence, it's saying that the great teachers have been around for eons and eons and eons and eons of time. They've been teaching here on this planet, and they've been teaching on other planets. And we may be thinking, well, where are these great teachers? These great teachers, Lord Buddha 2,500 years ago, Lord Christ 2,000 years ago. Where are these great, great teachers now in human history? Well, as man has continued to evolve physically, evolve emotionally, evolve mentally, these great teachers will show up in different forms for the people who are open and receptive and ready and willing to become initiated. Because initiation doesn't just happen on a physical level where we happen to be walking down the street and we run into a Lord Jesus, who then we touch the feet of the teacher and he empowers us with all the ancient wisdom to be in complete alignment with our higher souls. It's not always taking place in a physical realm, in a physical reality. We're also being initiated energetically in the inner world. So you have physical initiations and you have energetic initiations. Just like a physical initiation would be baptism, dunking somebody into water, consecrated blessed water. That's a physical initiation, which also has a corresponding energetic initiation. It cleanses the person's energy body and expands their energy body, purifying them so they have greater connectivity to their higher souls, to their teacher, to the great ones, and ultimately to God. So the path of discipleship is a razor's edge, as how it refers to in the book. And that takes lifetimes to master. And what I mean by razor's edge is, have you noticed that if you look at people who have lived a very strict way for part of their life, the pendulum tends to swing all the way over. For instance, you have rock stars who live very, very chaotic lives for 10, 15, or 20 years, right? Drugs, rock and roll, staying out at all hours of the night, sleeping with hundreds of women, in the case of the men rock stars. So they are way, 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 way over here, right? And then something shifts in their life. Because of suffering, because of pain, because of lack of connection to their higher selves, the pendulum swings that they tend to find God. They tend to find religion. They tend to become vegetarian. They tend to practice celibacy or abstinence in their lives because the pendulum is swinging, because they're seeking balance. They're seeking moderation. They're seeking to walk the razor's edge. Kelly, I'm a namaste. Same thing with people who have lived lives of crime. At a young age, teenagers in their early 20s, they tend to be very rambunctious, causing a lot of damage, stealing things, destroying public property, and then maybe selling drugs, and then they get put into jail. Maybe they have a life sentence. Maybe they have a life sentence, and then what? Then they find God in prison. They become born again. They convert to Christianity. They convert to Islam. They convert to Buddhism, whatever it is. The pendulum is swinging. Then you also have people who were brought up in very strict households, right, where no drinking, no premarital sex, no drugs of any kind, no medicines of any kind, no structured fun. So their emotional bodies were very rigid and very controlled as they were growing up. Then what happens? When they go into society or when they leave their family life, the pendulum goes from very rigid lifestyle and they become footloose and fancy-free, doing everything and anything in order to experience the lower nature. So it's this fight, this adjustment back and forth between the call of the higher soul and the urges of the lower nature, and trying to find balance within them. Balance, the razor's edge, walking the razor's edge. It's called the path of the Tao, right? And so that's what a spiritual teacher can help each and every person with. Helping that person go, all right, you've been over here, you've seen both sides of the coin, how do you get here? And that's what the Lord Buddha taught, the path of moderation and non-excessiveness, which is extraordinarily difficult to practice. We're not talking about theory, we're talking about practice. Gonna rip, Atma Namaste. So this book is an excellent book in helping the spiritual aspirant understand where they are on the spiritual path, where they are on their levels of initiation, and then what they can do to go from the lower level initiation to the higher level initiation and beyond. And I can promise you, initiation is not easy. It's actually extremely difficult. But as you practice, less and less and less of your ego and less of your personality is attached to the fruit of your practice. Meaning, when people sit down and meditate, they have an expectation of tremendous bliss, tremendous peace, higher clairvoyance, connecting to some inner teacher. And if they don't have those experiences, they give up. They quit their practice. I'm not experiencing enough bliss. There's no point. I'm not seeing I'm not having all these clairvoyant experiences. It must not be for me, right? Because they have an expectation. But if you can be diligent with your practice for a period of decades, some beautiful things will transform in your life. But you reach a point that it's no longer, I'm doing my practice because I'm seeking something. It's, I'm doing my practice because it's what I'm called to do. I'm doing my practice because it's the right thing to do. You're not attached to the fruit of your practice. And that's what karma yoga is. Dreama, Atma Namaste, good to have you on. It looks like you changed your profile picture. It's very purpley. One of my favorite colors. I'm apparently all over the map today. I got a comfy sweater on that looks like I should be going out to, a casual business meeting, and then I'm wearing exercise shorts. I'm all over the map. I guess that's what happens when your body's not feeling well. You just do whatever you feel like. So, highly recommend this book for any and all spiritual aspirants on the path, called The Path of Discipleship by Annie Besant. The Path of Discipleship by Annie Besant. Highly, highly recommend it. It's a little tiny book, about 150 pages long, small pages, and it'll take you a lifetime to master the teachings within that book. As with any great spiritual book, you don't just read it once and go, that's it. I've mastered all the lessons. I know everything that's going on. Zach, you're very welcome. My pleasure. Love to both of you guys. You don't just read a spiritual book one time and you're done. You have to read it over and over and over again to understand the deeper levels of what the teacher who wrote that book is pointing at. There's a famous metaphor, if you will, in spirituality, that we spend so much time looking at the fingers, right? God, Yahweh, the unified field, Mother Gaia, the universe. We spend all this time looking at the fingers, and this is where religion comes into play. That's why, as Master Choa says, religion divides, spirituality unites. This is what we're doing. We're looking at the finger and arguing about the finger, but we're not looking at where the finger's pointing. So you say God, like I notice feeling the energy of people and having enough conversations with people that if you say God around spirituality, they get kind of worked up because they have emotional programming from their childhood and from their church and from society that God has a negative connotation. But if you say universe, they're like, oh yeah, totally get it. Or if you say love, totally get it. Liam, namaste. But you have to ask yourself the question, all these labels, God, universe, love, where are they pointing? I'm spending so much time looking at the finger and arguing and fighting about the finger that I'm not looking at where the fingers are pointing. I got news for you guys. All of the great religions, the 13 major religions of the world, are all saying the same thing. They're all pointing at the same principle. But we're so caught up in the terminology and arguing and fighting the terminology that we miss the teaching. We miss the lesson. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense, or I'm just talking for myself. Well, Vika says, true. Yeah, again, these teachings are not my teachings. These teachings were taught to be by my teacher, Grandmaster Choa Koksui, who I am internally grateful for and indebted to because he was able to synthesize conflicting theories and conflicting teachings and conflicting energies to make it understandable as, oh, that's what this spiritual teacher is getting at. That's what this spiritual teacher is getting at. Even though they're different teachers teaching from different schools and different religions. But fundamentally, they're all saying the same thing. That's why there is no such thing as your God and my God. There is only one God. In Hinduism, the land of 30 million religions, or 30 million deities, or 30 million gods, the one God is the Para Brahman, the supreme God or the supreme being. Rushik, Atma Namaste, long time. Good to have you on. So, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, put it in the comment section below. I'll read it. There's always a 10 to 15 second delay when you put something on Facebook. I'll comment to the best of my ability to add value to you guys. If you're in need of healing, go to ChristianRLong.com/services. It's a 60-minute session, 30 minutes of coaching, 30 minutes of healing to transform you, and it'll be one of the greatest things that you've ever done in your life. I've been doing this professionally for 14 years. I love the work that I do. I'm honored to do this work, and I'm always learning more and more and more as I do this work. It's quite powerful, quite transformative. Today was a longer talk. I was just going to jump on real quick because my body's not feeling too well, but apparently as we keep talking, more energy keeps flowing. Loving Atma Namaste. Oh, right. Very good. That's it. So catch me tomorrow. We do these live streams every day on a different topic that inspires me to connect with you guys on, and you're more than welcome to send me topic requests, private message me on Facebook, or email me at ChristianRLong@gmail.com, and let me know how I can serve you, because we all need healing, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have in your bank account, no matter how healthy your physical body is, no matter how amazing your relationships are right now, no matter how spiritually evolved you are, we all need healing in one or all areas of our lives, myself included. So, that being said, have an amazing, phenomenal, off-the-chain Wednesday night and week and life, and I'll catch you very soon. This is ChristianRLong, Life Enhancement Consultant. Atma Namaste. Bye-bye.